absolutely. So what are some of the, sales components to make up? You can have a solution-based sales strategy. What does it take, right? What does it take to implement something like this? You can hire the best salesperson, but without having a process and a strategy in place, they're sort of swimming in deep water there. So these are some of the components that we cover in our BSIP program that we're starting off with our partners to help assist with developing these strategies and these processes to help you succeed and sell more effectively. You have to have a vision. You have to have objectives. That's critical because you need to have focus into to what your point, Madie, earlier is, you have to pick an industry and this is what you're going to try to sell to because you learn from it and you become a subject matter expert. You need to have a team, and we'll cover that in a little bit. But team structure is important. You have to have different roles and responsibilities, different duties that people accomplish, and not every organization is the same. Some organizations are smaller, and some people handle multiple tasks, but as you grow, you need to have a team structure. Sales content and documentation is important, just like it is with RFPs, but here you have a lot more degree of variety in the type of pamphlets, documentation, guides, PowerPoint presentations, pricing schedules, different type of contracts or agreements that you can have. And you need to have this in your toolkit. Boost helps our partners develop these, but as you grow and as you talk to different industries, you're going to develop some of your own content, best practices, onboarding guides, and so on. Another key critical piece of having, especially in the digital world, especially where we are today, when even though things are going back to normal and hybrid events, 70% to 60% of sales are still done remotely in these type of conversations that we're having. So it's important to have the tools and systems in place to facilitate that, not just between the customer or the prospect, but also within the organization. You want to be able to have these tools in place, and we'll discuss some of these tools in the next couple of minutes here. And it's really critical for you to learn what's working and not working, for you to be able to adjust and pivot. Maybe the industry you thought would be lucrative is not so much. Maybe there's some things going on that you learned. You have to have ways of measuring it. It cannot be subjective. It has to be objective. So you have to have indicators and other metrics to monitor and measure the performance of your sales team, what documentation and marketing strategies and campaigns are effective. It's really critical to do that. And I think the other piece that Bryan talked about earlier that we can discuss and help with our partners in terms of some of the strategies that are effective, ones that are, depending on the size of your organization, what type of budgets you have, is your marketing and lead generation. There's multiple ways of generating the lifeblood of an organization. And new opportunities are the lifeblood of an organization. So those are some of the things that we discuss with our partners on the BSIP, which is the Boostlingo Sales Incubator Program. So you have to have a strategy behind that, and you have to really understand, or have an idea of the type of leads you're going for and what the quality of these leads are. Because you can spend a lot of time with your salespeople and your SDRs going through really not qualified leads, and you spent a lot of money on that. So you have to have a strategy, and again, measuring these is important because now you know that these leads are not really that effective. So that's, let's get in here. Now, I just want to point out, I like this quote. I don't know where it originated or how I know it. Going back to the previous slide, successful sales strategy, it doesn't have to be perfect on day one. There was a conversation with an individual, and again, I don't know if this is an anecdote of some sort or a real story, but the person asked him, how do you become successful? How did you make your organization successful? And the individual answered, I make good decisions. And the individual followed up and he says, well, how do you make good decisions? Experience. Well, the individual was more inquisitive, right? He was solution-based selling. And he asked him, well, how do you get experience? And the individual asked, bad decisions, right? So you learn from your mistakes. And I think that's really important with this, is that any strategy you develop is going to take time to evolve and to really materialize with this.
Mhm.
We can go to the
Yeah.
next slide.
Yeah,
Go
I was
ahead,
just going
man.
to say, even in our organization, right, marketing is changing over time, and MQL's marketing qualified leads used to be like the gold standard. We want to get as many leads in the door as we can, right? But over time, we're learning, actually, we want to know if those leads are generating revenue. So you're tracking marketing source revenue. And so it's an evolving process for every organization, and especially if you're just starting, there's going to be a learning curve, especially as the industry evolves. So I love that advice, Mike.
Absolutely. Yeah. You have to constantly be learning, researching, and investigating. So one of the critical things we talked about is, your mission statement and your sales objectives. So what is that? You have to have a clearly defined mission statement or sales objectives. What do you want to accomplish, and in what time frame do you want to accomplish something? And it can't be something, it can be vague, but you have to have a way to measure it. You have to have a way to make it achievable, and it has to be relevant to your organization. If you're in selling language services, you're not going to go out and promote electrician work. So it has to be relevant to what your services are offering. Um, so to give a specific example, grow the number of client-based government contracts by 20%, right? Or grow your sales revenue by X amount. You can say you want to grow your sales revenue, but you have to have something that, measure it. And you might not, um, hit your quota, hit your goals 100%. And you can have short-term goals, long-term goals. There's different type of strategies you can implement to achieve this across different departments within the organization. So aligning everybody within the organization. Bryan, you use a quote often I hear you use is, you shoot for the moon, and if you don't make it, you at least will hit some of the stars, right? Or something along those lines.
It's
So
the
it's really
reverse, yeah. Shoot for the stars, so
shoot
you
for
might hit
stars
the
or land on
moon.
the moon. Sorry.
Moon's closer than the stars, yeah.
Well, we got 2 stars right here on this call, right?
There you
So,
go.
so it's important to set your objectives clearly because you want to have a focus and a goal. Um, and then the other piece to that is really to what Madie and Bryan had alluded to before is doing some industry research. Understand, because you cannot really go in and have a presentation prepared unless you understand the market. You want to understand if this is a viable market. Is there a need for something like this? Is there a demand? Can I make a business case? Whether you're talking about a legal client or an agricultural client, or or anything to that effect, it's important to have that knowledge and that expertise behind you. Pricing is also critical. You don't want to price yourself too low because you're establishing value. It's not a race to the bottom with solution-based selling. You really want to establish the value add, and sometimes people will want to pay a premium price if you can show them and illustrate why it's important. So establishing a pricing parameter of high, low, but also not just pricing, but a pricing schedule, and understanding sort of what are some of the levers you can pull within that organization. And I think one of the other pieces that's important is the buyer's persona or the buyer's purchasing process, right? How do they go about making a decision? You can be dealing with an ambulatory care, small physician's office, and you know that the owner is just the one that's going to make a decision. But in another organization, there could be an IT department, there could be somebody else. So really understanding to whom you're selling to and what their buying process is, and sort of what some of the barriers that you feel could be obstacles that you will need to overcome when discussing this. And some of these things you will learn through having conversations with your prospects. This is not something, day one you'll have all this information. A lot of this you will learn by having these conversations and listening to people. So it's all about listening. There, you could obviously research some of this stuff, and you will be able to find analytical data on the internet and elsewhere, market research that will provide you some talking points and context. But I think that by talking to people and having conversations, you learn a lot more that way, things that you cannot just learn by reading. And then understanding competitors. I think seeing what your competitors are doing, what they're not doing, is also important, and sort of what are their solution points, how are they selling, what are their price points. I think it's important, and it's an ongoing research. It's not just gonna, you're not just gonna create a matrix and this is it. It's constantly evolving. So I think these are some of the key points that we can help you strategize and organize before you decide to go down the road of solution-based selling, and targeting audiences. This is important information also to drive leads and marketing. You want to understand, what some of the audiences you want to target, what are the roles within those organizations you want to be speaking to.
Absolutely. And I'd love for you to kind of dive into the calculus on the market size and competitors, especially if we're thinking of the difference between, some of the people on the call are a one-man shop, some of them have a bigger team. How do you decide, is this market something I can compete in as far as a size and a competitor standpoint?
I think it's a great question, and it's there's a couple of points here. The market sizes of the client, right? So how do I answer this? I think the larger organization, you probably have the ability to go after larger opportunities, which have a little bit of a longer sales cycle, but are going to be more lucrative, and you can expand the resources to do that. With a smaller LSC that's just starting off, you want to try to find some of the lower hanging fruit, where the sales cycles are not going to be as great or as long, but depending on how you price out your services, using a subscription-based model, you will be able to generate some revenue, even though the usage might not be as high. So selling into certain, let's say, we talk about agricultural space, finding that niche and where you can bridge communication barriers. There might not be a huge volume with these clients, but you will learn a lot, and you will expand, your land, sort of your opportunities, your market share within that within that market size.
Yeah, I think as a general rule of, I was just going to add to that, Mike. It was really good commentary. One of the things I would say is also from somebody who started a couple different startups, it's really hard to go after really large opportunities, enterprise sales at first, right? You want to identify a transactional, repeatable sales process, and you get that really through shorter sales cycles, high volume type of operations. And so the good news is, in this market, it's a really long tail of businesses that need these services, and there may not be a customer may only need an interpreter 4 times a month, but that customer you can close in a matter of weeks. And so you sort of build yourself up. Walk before you run, I think, is a good adage to follow here when you're thinking about starting out. Gets back to the earlier conversation we had on RFPs. That's probably not where you should start. Again, I don't want to dissuade anybody on the call from filling out RFPs, because you might win. But if you're just starting out as an LSC, the probability that you win an RFP is much, much lower than some of the larger providers that have been doing this for a very long time and have that past performance. And so I always recommend, identify a market. Mike talked about all these different things you should do in terms of an industry strategic research. But the other thing I would add is, what's the pain? Pain equals opportunity. What are the pains that the customers are having? And map your solution sale, tailor your solution sale around those specific pain points. And if you can do that, you'll have a much higher conversion rate from your marketing leads to close.
Thanks, Brian. That was a really good point. Yeah. So traditional, again, every organization is going to have a little bit of a different structure, but to do a solution-based sale, you really have to have kind of 3 components. Now, depending on the size of the organization, you can have all these into a single person and expand as you grow. Depending on the size of the opportunities and the type of opportunities you're going after and what your commission or quota model is with your sales reps, you might have a blended account executive and account manager. They can be one and the same sort of roles, because you want to incentivize salespeople. I think that's important. You want to incentivize them to land and expand. as one of the things as well. So this is just sort of a general model of a sales structure, a team that you want to have, an SDR that does the qualifications, that is the phone operator that goes out there and establishes the opportunity, qualifies it a little bit based on certain key qualifiers, right? And then hands it off to an account executive who is the closer, who does the presentation, who understands the pain points and sort of provides that solution-based, customized sale or solution. I wouldn't even call it a sale. It's a solution that you're providing to that client, to that prospect, and bringing them on. And then you have the account managers um, uh, who are there to work with the client and throughout the life of that client within your organization, to providing them support, updates on what's going on within the organization. And again, it really depends on the size of your company, where you're starting from, whether you need that account management. But I think that account management is crucial to keeping customers happy and engaged, because you always want to know what's going on with your clients. Are they happy? Is there other solutions that you could be providing them? There could be cross-sell opportunities, upsell opportunities, and as you're changing your industry or your organization, you're adding on new features, and Boost is coming out with new capabilities. You want to be able to pass that knowledge down to your customers, because that might actually be something they're looking for. They just didn't know you were offering it. So constantly being engaged. There's certain ratios in building a team structure. Generally, I know that says 2 there, but it's generally 1 SDR to 3 account managers or account executives. There's certain sales skills that you want to look for in these type of individuals. And I'm not going to get into the weeds of that on this call, but we do discuss this with our BSIP meetings. And you want to hire the right person. Also incentivizing and creating the right quotas, making them realistic, but incentivizing the salesperson, because salespeople ultimately, their goal is to make money. So you want to make sure you incentivize them accordingly, so that one thing you don't want to run into is having a large turnover of salespeople, right? You're going to be constantly training them. So you want people to stay within your organization, not just by culture or what they believe, but also incentivizing them accordingly. And there's models on how to do that. You don't want to pay somebody more than what you're taking in, but there's models on doing that. So
yeah, I think the account manager point is so perfect for this industry specifically, because as Bryan was saying, there's a lot of people who you'll sell virtual interpreting to, that didn't even know this existed, right? And so maybe they come on with a small contract and the account manager teaches them how to use the product, and they get to be more comfortable with it. They add on minutes, right? So there's just a really big growth potential with a lot of these clients that you'll sign. And so having that account manager is a way to increase your revenue over time, as well as keeping the customer happy. So I think it's a really good point.
Yeah,